Hey everybody, welcome to the latest Israel update. This is Hanoch Young in scenic downtown Modi'in, Israel, with my dear friend, buddy, comrade, mentor, etc., 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 Mike Clayton in Franklin, North Carolina.
Wait a minute,
Welcome.
you didn't put in scenic, North Carolina.
I'm sorry, scenic. But you got to remember, I haven't seen very many scenes lately, so, I have to go back to memory for that one.
That is so true. That is so true. Yeah, you're a bit limited in your scope of scenic, although there's a lot of people that would love to have the view out your window. You just say
So is the glass half full or half empty?
well,
Or is there a glass?
or is there glass, or is Hanok already shattered the glass and stepped on it? And well, that's a trail we could go down, right?
Yeah, sure, for sure.
So you're on
Anyway,
lockdown. It's everything's total, complete. They haven't put the handcuffs on you yet.
no, not at this time. The numbers keep rising. You know, we could get off into a whole thing of what the numbers mean and what they don't. The bottom line, though, the at the end of March, April, and beginning of May, they're not going to just like open the shutters this time. Not going to happen. So they're working on a 6-stage plan. Of course, this is all going to be battered around politically. Otherwise we'll be in lockdown number 3 and then lockdown number, et cetera, in perpetuity. This actually, in all honesty, should have been discussed in April. Those in positions of power, and the responsibility sits with our Prime Minister, Netanyahu. People hate when I say that because they love to think of him in some idyllic manner. He screwed up big time, and we're paying for it. So they still have yet to determine. The guy that they appointed in July as the coronavirus czar, Professor Gamzu, is leaving at the end of October because he was given all the responsibility with none of the authority.
Oh well.
So
Yeah. Why do
anyway,
something like that?
but more important,
Speaking of irresponsible, you just mentioned to me that there was an announcement of one of the UAE individuals regarding the land of Israel.
yeah, at the UN very clearly that the deal with Israel, from their perspective, stopped, quote, the annexation of the West Bank, unquote, and that they are firmly committed to the two-state solution. Now,
No, get out of here! You got to be
get out
kidding.
of town. Well, I got to tell you, if that second state was in Midland, Odessa, or in Manitoba, Canada, bless their hearts, all our friends there, but I could live with that. In the middle of the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria, no.
Yeah, yeah, and I think if people would go back and listen to our archives, you might hear us talking about something like that. Now, you posted something yesterday, Hano, that of course brought out some kind of controversies, which is really one of the first times you've ever done that. Uh,
Yeah, it's true to me.
Israel is not forbidden in the Torah of making covenant with other lands and peoples. Israel is forbidden in Torah to make a covenant that has to do with the possession of the land. Am I correct in that?
Exactly. And that's where the problem with this deal with United Arab Emirates and Bahrain sit, because it has to do with, God forbid, the creation of a state from the so-called Palestinian Authority in our heartland. So if you think of it from ancient terms, it would be like negotiating with the Romans or Greeks or the Chinese or whoever to allow the Canaanites to remain in the land and have their independence.
Kind of like David going out, and instead of releasing that rock, saying maybe we can negotiate this out.
Yes, let's form a root committee to study the causes of Philistine anti-Semitism, and why they hate us so much, and we could sit down and sing Kumbaya together.
I wonder how that would have worked in Scripture. David probably would not have been quite as famous if he would have tried that approach. Just saying. So
no.
Yeah. So let's get to something important. Okay. By now, you probably have your trailer is hooked up to your car, and you got your sleeping bag, and everything is packed, and you're ready to go up to the Golan and go camping for 7 days, right?
Well, it's funny that you mention that, because, and I go back to a conversation that I had about 2 years ago in the US. I don't want to state the location. So the guy said to me, so let me ask you, what do you Jews do on Sukkot? So, I find that like kind of amazing that someone can be in the Hebrew roots Ephraimite movement and be totally clueless what their Jewish brothers and sisters do. But okay, where people can Google the different ways to sear a steak before grilling, it's okay. So I explained, well, and then he quickly interjected, do y'all go camping? So I said, okay, give me a chance. Let me tell you what's going on. In the Torah, it tells us to create a temporary structure, a sukkah, a booth, the Festival of Tabernacles, booths. And you're supposed to eat all your meals there. There are some people that even sleep in them. And the Torah also tells us to take the 4 species. Let me see if I can do this in English. The palm branch, the citron, the willow, and the myrtle. Wow. Okay.
Can you do it in Hebrew, though?
And yes. Lulav, etrog, hadassim, and aravot. That was much easier for me. Yeah. Makes me a legend in my own mind.
Yes.
Anyway.
Not the first time.
So this guy is nodding. And he said to me, okay. Now, again, this is the literal reading from the Torah itself. This isn't rabbinic. This isn't Talmudic. This isn't, And then he said to me, but do y'all go camping? So here in Israel, or in Jewish communities worldwide, even without a COVID-19 situation, we do not go camping. That's not how we celebrate Sukkot. For those individuals who don't have their own sukkah, but let's just say, okay. I remember, in New York City, we had no place to build a sukkah that would be vandalized and destroyed, whatever. 2 years, I remember many years ago, putting it on the roof of the building that I was on. And then the landlord realized the liability and said, nah, you can't do it. That was kind of a trip, figuratively and literally. But shuls, synagogues, would have a communal sukkah. Okay. So sometimes they would have catered meals for the congregation. Again, not potluck, but catered meals. And or people would come and use the sukkah, bring their own food.
Hmm.
Now, in the Hebrew roots, Ephraimite two-house movement, Messianic believers, etc., 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 the concept of camping over Sukkot has become a thing in vogue. And I have to tell you, I think it's a tremendous advantage to those communities that do it. It's a real possibility of building tremendous camaraderie within your community. You're together. It's like, what you've described to me as vacation Bible school when you were a kid. We never had that kind of stuff in the Jewish community.
No.
There were summer camps parents could never afford, never
Okay.
went. Yeah. So, I send this boy away to the country because it didn't happen. But I think it's a tremendous advantage. There's a sharing of Torah study. If done right, it could be tremendous,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely tremendous. Now, of course, when I first started speaking in the States regularly back in 2013, I received an enormous amount of invitations to come and speak at various Sukkot gatherings. At the time, people didn't realize that I was an actual traditionally believing Jew. So they invited me. What I'm saying by that is when people found out that I didn't have the same belief system that they had, that's when the invitations stopped. But my point of the whole thing is, you'd think, well, Sukkot's only 7 days. How many places could I possibly have spoken at? Well, because everyone was keeping a different calendar, I could have been traveling in the States for a month and spoken at Sukkot gatherings.
There
Just
was
a little bit of.
There was one year that people were going off the Aviv, and so I actually was able to do, I think it was 5 or 6 Sukkots in one
Exactly.
year. Yeah, it was great. And interesting enough, the whole thing. I'm distracted, by the way. I just looked out my window, Hanok, which you're familiar with. Where I'm at in my office here.
Sure.
You know where my deer feeder is? You remember where my deer feeder? Okay, there is a 6-point buck sitting out there, eating corn. And
wow.
I'm drooling at the moment, imagining him with little flour and onions and maybe some tomato gravy and rice on the side. So yeah.
The fact that we're still recording, I find amazing. Tremendous self-discipline, Mike. Congratulations.
No. The only reason we're still recording is because it's not hunting season yet. And the only reason the deer is there is because it's not hunting season yet. See, something you don't know about, and this will be, this little training that I have to give you in, like, what was Vacation Bible School, and what does it mean to go Sukkotin and Shabbatin and all these things, is that when hunting season starts, okay, that buck will be sent an email telling him that the hunting season has started, and so he will not show up again at that until hunting season is over.
Is that when they get that voice message that says, "Run, Forrest, run"?
Yes. It's the
Are you back?
Run to the forest is it. Okay. All right. Now we need to get back on track here if I can. Let me look this way and I'll talk. Okay. He's looking at me. He's just running now. Okay. We can go back to things. Now, it all goes to the word in Hebrew, Yesav. The word to dwell is translated here in English. I don't know how close I got to the Hebrew there.
Okay.
But the word dwell, I mean, that's a very subjective word, is it not?
Well, the thing that's interesting is the understanding in the Jewish community is on Sukkot, we leave the comfort and security of our homes to recreate, at least temporarily, the sense that the children of Israel had in leaving Egypt on their way to Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. Now, it's to create that sense of temporariness, not having a permanent lodging, and being a little uncomfortable, if you will. Mm-hmm. The thing that's amazing about it is it occurring this year when we're all discomforted in so many ways. The idea that for the first time in my life, I was unable to go to a Beit Knesset, a synagogue, and spend the day praying on Yom Kippur. Mm. And I have to tell you, it was incredibly hard on my own. You know, you're standing, you're sitting, you're thinking, you're praying, you're trying not to be distracted, you're trying to focus, and it's incredibly hard because you have no communal energy. And it's interesting because I saw something I think it was just yesterday even. Of course, I haven't posted it yet on Facebook, about aloneness. And this time period, particularly in our second lockdown here in Israel, is a time of aloneness, a time where you have to be comfortable with yourself, where your whole world has changed. You know, I am one of 1 million Israelis who was unable to work. It's a totally unreal situation, but still we have the concept with a holiday, with a feast, v'samachta v'chagecha. You have to be happy and rejoice.
Okay. I'm thinking now, it's not about the buck. So Hebrew roots, Messianic Hebrew roots, most of the people that are involved in this, we call movement, I guess, came out of Christianity. Christianity is, for the most part, about the individual. Okay, it's about the individual redemption.
Personal salvation, yes.
Exactly. Yes. Whereas Judaism, on the other side, is more about the communal, to use your word, communal redemption, communal salvation.
Right.
To use a verse, out of Yirmiyahu, I know the plans I have for you, says Adonai, plans of future and a hope. Someone with a Western, grew up like I do, when you look at the word you think of you as an individual, but in Hebrew, that is actually a plural. So to translate that, it would not be, I know the plans I have for y'all, but I know the plans I have for all y'all. Okay.
All y'all, exactly.
That's the Southern translation. So here we got something, Hanok. The Sukkot, for those in this walk of Hebrew roots, Messianic walk, during Sukkot is not about the individual, but is about the communal. This year in Judaism, specifically in Israel, you guys are being taken out of the communal and into the individual.
Exactly. It's the exact reverse.
So, and I mean, is this something that we could see that Hashem is doing in order to break us out of our typical molds,
Well, it's interesting. When people ask, what do you think is, because it's, the Jewish side of the family and we'll just say the Ephraimite side of the family kind of glare across each other. And it's the classic, who's going to blink first?
Yeah.
Who's going to change? Who's going to give up their beliefs and accept the other's beliefs? And both you and I, in our own ways, coming from different directions with a slightly different perspective on it, see it differently. I remember our very first conversation when we first met in South Carolina with our dear friends Jan and Craig Odell. You know, you asked me what did I think was going to happen. And I said at the time, and I still believe this, that I think we're all going to get sort of an individualized prescription. You need to be doing a little more of this and a little less of that. And you asked me at the time, well, what do you think? You know, you want to know what I think? I said, yeah. He said, what if we're both, you said, what if we're both wrong? Which is actually another way of saying pretty much what I said, in the sense that it's going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
What if, taking your point, the Jewish side of the family is getting to be exposed a bit to the psychology or the worldview of the Ephraimite side of the family, at the same time that the Ephraimite side of the family is getting a chance to see it from the Jewish side? What a concept.
You mean that might help us to understand each other? You know, I mean, that would be an
Wow.
interesting...
Now you may be heading towards a bridge too far. Because if people understand, you know, it's like when people say to me, every once in a while, someone will approach me and say, you seem to be very accepting of people's different religious views than yours. So I said, yeah, I'm all about mutual respect. I said, okay, so at what point do you find it safe, if you will, to share your testimony? Now, at first, I didn't understand what they were asking because we don't have that concept.
Yeah.
The Jewish side of the family doesn't walk around saying, y'all got to hear my testimony. It's not a testimony, because a testimony is to get you to see the world through my eyes, the way I do. And then when I explain, again, it's a real disconnect moment, because people are still plugged into the world as they see it. As I like to say, we're busy recreating God in our own image as opposed to the reverse.
Yeah, that works so well for the Hebrews there with the golden calf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It showed it, by the way, the term in Hebrew, savlanut, patience. Think of it this way. We didn't have it then, and we don't have it now.
You
So
know,
when y'all come back to Israel, don't be surprised.
There you go. You know, we talk about mutual respect, and I want to be clear in that mutual respect is not about in any way watering down your own convictions.
Absolutely not.
It's not about, you know, it's not about you. You know, I believe what I believe. You're very much aware of what I believe. We've talked about, you know, our differences in depth in conversations that, quite honestly, we don't repeat outside of those conversations. Okay, that's part of the respect that we have in this. And so, you know, in that, we can pretty much talk about as freely as we want. I mean, I've seen it in your eyes a few times where you kind of looked away like that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. But, you know, but I've never heard anything like that come from you. Okay, I got one more point. Good.
Sure.
Okay, one more point. This is one that's is always been kind of fascinating to me. So we talked about the dwell, and the word dwell is kind of subjective thing. So, you know, Daniel and Kate's and the kids were over last night, and we were talking about this word. they've got two boys and now little girl, and how do you dwell? Do you do the tent out in the yard? Well, that's not really, it's not good now. So what about putting the tent on the deck? And they tried that last year and it got rained out and flooded. And so the word dwell is one that we really cannot put over onto someone else. I think we all have to come up with that word dwell specifically for our individuals, as an individual. Is that okay?
Absolutely. And, to me, dwelling is a temporary term. It's like when I'm traveling in the States and speaking, to a certain degree, I dwell with you and Kathy at your home for several days, 4 or 5 days, more until you throw me out. Or I stay there, but it's not my residence. I don't live there. And, dwelling is also a bit of a psychological concept as I see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sense that, well, as we said just, a few moments ago, here it is in Israel, we're alone. Those who have families living with them, my daughter's in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
It's not, she has to stay in, she can't get out of the city. I know that sounds absurd to the world out there, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But it's a sense that Sukkot to me has always been the holiday of emunah, of faith. Mm-hmm. I think you're frozen.
You're still good.
Are you unfrozen?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, great. The ultimate holiday of emunah, of faith. You have to understand something. In the Jewish community, for close to 2,000 years, people were praying for rain. At the end of Sukkot, we changed the prayers and moved from dew to rain. The rain was to nourish the fields of the land of Israel, to feed the people of the cities of Israel. When for almost 1,400 years, there were no Jewish cities in Israel. There were no fields feeding Jewish, communities. But still, the prayers were never changed because of that faith that there would be once again.
Wow. Okay, well, you take me to two things then. We mentioned briefly in a psalm that I teach, I taught on with my Living Torah message coming out tomorrow, Psalm 137. By the rivers of Babylon we sat and we hung our harps or our lyres upon the willows. To me, that's a Sukkot scripture that is about a people in Babylon. Could we also look at that psalm this year, even for you living in Israel, in Modi'in, your daughter Ayala living in Jerusalem, that it's still a time for us to hang our lyres, our harps on the willows, speaking of Sukkot, because we are going to have a greater understanding this year that you can even be an observant Jew living in the old city of Jerusalem, but still be in exile because the kingdom has not been established.
Yes, and I say that with a bit of a qualification because there's exile and there's exile. The strict term galut is anywhere outside of the land of Israel. However, there's a psychological exile that can still exist. You know, it's the classic, you can take the boy out, like in my case, you could take the boy out of the Bronx, but you can't really take the Bronx out of the boy. You can
We're working
still,
on that. Yes.
we are definitely trying. Um, there's a concept of galut mentality, of exile mentality. This is the, we have to follow what the EU says, otherwise they'll be mad at us. Otherwise they'll slap a boycott on us. There's still this sense of like, you're living in Russia, being afraid that the Cossacks are going to come and slaughter you, or you're living, in Morocco, and they're going to make a speech at the local mosque, and they're going to come and destroy the Jewish, neighborhood. We're living in an independent Medinat Yisrael, state of Israel. If people wonder why it is that I'm so critical of our government, our Knesset operates very much like the Trump-Biden debate of last night. So, what's interesting is America got a taste of Israeli-style democracy. But that's enough. We're not gonna talk about that anymore. There's nothing I can do about it anyway. In any case, so back to Sukkot.
Yeah. If there's if there's anything that should have been brought out of that last night, is your kingdom come, may it be soon and in our day.
Absolutely, because this is a hurting world. We've got our issues and challenges here in Israel. Y'all have them in America as well.
Yeah.
Different ones, some similar ones. And we need a true, tshuva is mistakenly translated as repentance.
Yeah.
It's not, it's a turning or return. And to me, that return has always been to what is the purpose? And the purpose is the restoration of all of Israel.
Yeah, I got that. Well, Hanok, we're not going to be doing an Israel update next week because Kathy and I will be out doing some Sukkotin. Due to the situation, we had some plans made and we had to rearrange those yesterday and totally go the opposite direction, but we're going to be on the road and enjoying some time this week. And want to wish you Chag Sameach and a blessed Sukkot season as you dwell in your sukkah. May the Ruach HaKodesh dwell in that sukkah with you.
Amen, and with you too, Mike. Now and always.
All right. Hey, anyone, KolYehuda.com. You got your Sukkotin questions regarding, whatever the question, whatever you wanted to ask an traditionally observant Jew and were afraid to ask. Go to KolYehuda.com, and you can also hit that little donate button. And Sukkot offering, folks. We need to come. And I was reading something the other day about, and I'll finish with this. It was a book I mentioned to you that was written by a Jew that you're familiar with, and he talked about the end of days. And he said, how can we prepare for the end of days? And one of the things he said was, and this was written to Jews. Okay, he said, go to Israel or figure out how to get a bank account in Israel. And I thought, well, I can't do that. He said, buy a piece of property, even a piece of land in Israel. Well, I can't do that. But the next thing that he said was, you can live in Israel through your donations of helping those that are in Israel.
It's very true.
So I just want to leave that with people of maybe Hanok is how you can connect, because I know Hanok enough that what he is given, whatever he can, goes to help other people around him. So All right. I'm off that
Thanks.
soapbox for now. Hanok, see you in 2 weeks.
Shalom. Take care, Mike.